What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Alright, so the Revenge of the Green Lantern's Prelude is amazing. It's super good. Actually, we'll get to see Batman become a Green Lantern, or at least what it would look like with him as a Green Lantern. It's only for a moment, but it is pretty stellar. It's pretty awesome. That's one of the things that I really loved about Geoff Johns' writing is you get to see these cool little moments. Characters that you would never see put on a lantern ring suddenly become a lantern, and it is, it looks amazing. Batman as a Green Lantern looks incredibly amazing. It's one of the coolest things we're ever going to see. So initially this picks up with Hal Jordan on Oa, and he's actually talking to Salak. Now, the reason why this is Revenge of the Green Lantern's Prelude is because of the fact that the main Revenge of the Green Lantern story is going to deal with the fallout, the direct fallout of Emerald Twilight. Now, for those of you guys who are new to the Green Lantern mythos, if I bring up the name Parallax, you guys are probably going to think of Parallax as like the giant yellow entity. And that makes sense because that's what he is now. He's the entity. He's the, the representation of the emotional spectrum with regards to fear. But back in the 1990s, Parallax was just a name that Hal Jordan gave himself. And so when Hal Jordan just started running around operating as Parallax, he killed basically all the Green Lanterns. He really took their rings and so on and so forth, destroyed them all. Like, his ring was recreated and given to Kyle Rayner, but he was basically just a bad guy. And so what Revenge of the Green Lanterns is going to do is actually going to show us that not all of those original Green Lanterns died, that some of them lived, but they've simply been held away. They've been kept in stasis by Cyborg Superman ever since their presumed death, or ever since the events of Emerald Twilight took place. Now, of course, the reason why this is significant is because of the fact that Salak basically sits down with Hal Jordan and says, look, man, the Guardians of the Universe have basically absolved you. They've welcomed you back into the fold. They said you're no longer a guy who's to be shunned. You're a member of the Green Lantern Corps who's to be celebrated, and really the greatest of the Green Lantern Corps. But what Salak says is, just because the Guardians have forgiven you doesn't mean everybody else has. He simply says, you're going to want to watch your back, because the veterans know what you did. They've heard about what you did. Those individuals who are brand new will hear about what you did, and some individuals may have lost friends and family. Some people inherited the rings of their mothers and fathers, and so because of that, they're going to blame you for the loss of the ones that they care about. And if you're not careful, it's going to cost you your life. So again, what this does is it shows us that just because they're Green Lanterns doesn't mean there's not infighting. It doesn't mean that there's not bickering and arguing, and that some individuals just can't get along, and that there aren't grudges being held. All of that stuff still exists, and that's why it's so cool, is because Geoff Johns does not take this standard of, well, they're all Green Lanterns and they're all best friends. No, he says they're Green Lanterns, but a lot of them don't like each other, and a lot of them would rather kill other Green Lanterns than see somebody wear that lantern ring. So again, it's really kind of a cool idea here. What we do is, again, because of the fact that Hal Jordan largely focuses on events that are on Earth, we transition over to Gotham City. And the reason why is because of the fact that Batman informs Hal Jordan that there's someone running around called the Tattoo Man. Now, of course, the cool thing about this is Geoff Johns draws on the existing Hal Jordan mythos. Remember, when Green Lantern Rebirth was launched and Hal Jordan came back and the whole history of Parallax and everything was explained, Geoff Johns, it wasn't like a hard reboot. Geoff Johns didn't wipe the slate clean from the Green Lantern mythos. We can treat it that way, but it isn't that way. In truth, the entire history of Hal Jordan remains intact. He was first given the Green Lantern ring by Abin Sur. He went on to become, one of the most capable Green Lanterns. He was, of course, he really had Sinestro as his main villain. Eventually, he became Parallax. Kyle Rayner took his place as the last Green Lantern, and then we went into Green Lantern Rebirth back when everything was kind of started over again by Geoff Johns. But the reason why I bring that up is because Hal Jordan makes reference to a guy who is actually the original Tattooed Man. What Hal Jordan says is that the only Tattooed Man he knows about is a guy by the name of Abel Tarrant. And Abel Tarrant was the Tattooed Man for quite some time and basically had the ability to make his tattoos take physical form. But the new one is a guy by the name of Mark Richards. Now, Mark Richards is actually just kind of like what we get here in this story is really all we get for his character, barring, Final Crisis. But prior to that, all we had here was all that we got. He was just a guy. He was a former U.S. Marine. He just showed up on the scene one day. He had the ability to turn his tattoos into physical beings, and then those tattoos will carry out his own wishes, attack people, different things like that. The most recent victim is a guy by the name of Rosen, and this guy was basically killed, and then, what was written on his chest was simply the phrase, weakness, women. And that seems to be the basis behind the Tattooed Man, is he literally goes around and kills people people for their sins. Now, the other half of this is that Batman really kind of looks down on Hal Jordan. Now, we know that Batman doesn't like lanterns, and all of this really stems back to Emerald Twilight. Well, I wouldn't say that Batman and Hal Jordan were ever the best of friends. I would say that Hal Jordan was the last person Batman expected to turn villain, to turn into a bad guy. And so that issued a lot of betrayal on behalf of Batman. He's never really liked lanterns following the events of Emerald Twilight. Now, he does hold a special grudge for Hal Jordan. And because of this, with Hal Jordan, despite the fact that he showed up, he cast off his identity as Parallax, he's no longer the Spectre, it's just Hal Jordan, the pilot, and Green Lantern, Batman still wants to get even. And of course he does this by punching the heck out of him. He punches the absolute heck out of him. And that's it. No muss, no fuss. That's one of the really cool things. That's one of the things I like about guys, I think. I don't think guys hold grudges for a lengthy amount of time. That was a lesson I learned in middle school. In middle school, two girls would start fighting at the beginning of the year, and they would fight for the whole year. The whole school year. With guys, it wasn't like that. Guys are like, yeah, man, like, I don't like you, and then they'd fight, and either they were friends or they just didn't like each other from then on out. But they wouldn't fight every day, they wouldn't take pot shots at each other and stuff like that. But the fact remains here that with their differences more or less set aside, even if only for the time being, what Geoff Johns does is he actually gives us some really cool insight into the differences between Batman and Hal Jordan. What we know about Batman is a creature of the night. I mean, that's his thing. He hides in the shadows, he pops out of cracks in the ground, he shows up out of nowhere and subdues various villains. He relies on fear in order to ensure that those individuals who would commit a crime don't commit a crime, or at the very least think twice about it. Hal Jordan, on the other hand, does not view himself that way. In his mind, he wants to be a beacon for villains. He wants all villains everywhere to see him. And his motivation behind that is when he says the reason why is because he wants the villains to see him instead of anybody else. He wants the villains to target him instead of targeting innocent people. So again, it's actually a really cool philosophy between the two of them. But this fight with regards to Mark Richards, with regards to the Tattooed Man, is pretty short-lived. But the reason why this is a prelude for revenge of the Green Lanterns is because of the fact that in their conflict, what Mark Richards does is he confirms the fact that the various tattoos he has on his body are in relation to the sins that people have committed: murder, wrath, greed, arrogance, different things like that. The sins of man, the things that basically bend people towards tendencies regarding evil as opposed to good. And what he does is he looks at Hal Jordan and he says, there are so many sins on you: murder, betrayal, lies, deceit. You are a sinful man. And it's basically Geoff Johns hearkening to the idea that there's a lot of history that Hal Jordan hasn't dealt with. And that's true. Hal Jordan just kind of showed up on the scene and said, hey, I'm back to my normal self, guys. I'm ready to be a superhero again. And that was it. That was really all we got up to this point. There was no indication, no inclination that he had any intention to make up for his past misdeeds. And we'll talk about that more when we get to Revenge of the Green Lanterns. But of course, with Batman being the other half of this equation, Batman joins into the fray and then subdues Mark Richards pretty quick. I mean, it's a two-page battle. I mean, there's really not much about it, but that was the basis, was to basically take the guy out and call it a day. Now, the other half of this, and the reason why, one of the ways that we get to see Green Lantern Batman is when Hal Jordan sits down with him and says, I want to show you something. I want you to do something. And when Batman turns around, he gives him or hands him the Green Lantern ring, and he simply says, put it on and try to use it. Now, really a lot of this is because of the fact that it's Hal Jordan's gift to Batman. With regards to the Green Lantern ring, Geoff Johns is kind of explaining this to us and simply saying the ability to overcome great fear is fear of the unknown, but fear of your own past. It's fear of the mistakes that you've made and fear that you may fall right back down to those mistakes again. With regards to Batman, it feeds on the fear that he has in himself. Batman's not really afraid of villains. Batman's not really afraid of bad guys. He's not really afraid of ultra powerful people like Superman, despite the fact that they're heroes. Batman is afraid of the fact that he won't honor his parents. Batman is afraid of the fact that he's going to fail the task that he set for himself. Now, the way that we know this is because Hal Jordan says you can't forget about the things that happened to you, but when you're in that space in between the bad experiences that you've had and your attempt to let them go, that's where the power of the ring comes from. Batman harnesses it and is able to harness the power of the Green Lantern, and it is the coolest looking thing ever. It's so awesome, and Hal Jordan simply says, overcome this fear. Put that moment behind you. Put your childhood fear of Joe Chill. Put the fear that you felt when your parents were shot. Let that go. Put that behind you. Now, Batman's response is, I don't want to. But the way that this happens is with him basically conjuring constructs, and he conjures constructs of his parents. And that's what's so cool about this, is because of all the things that he could have conjured, the one thing he wanted to see was his parents. And it's a really touching moment. It's a beautifully done moment, because right now, this is not Bruce Wayne Batman. It's not the scary, terrifying Bruce Wayne Batman. This is the kid Batman. This is 8, 9, 10-year-old Bruce Wayne is what this is. That's why Jeff Johns Green Lantern, man, Jeff Johns, man. If God were writing Green Lantern right now is what it'll look like right now. It is an amazing little bit of storytelling here. And so again, you know, Bruce Wayne, Batman basically says, I don't want to put this behind me. And the motivation behind this is because of the fact that if he put his childhood fear behind him, if he put away the fear that he might not live up to the honor of his parents, if he puts away the fear that after, you know, his time as Batman is done, that he just hasn't made Gotham safe, then there wouldn't be a reason for him to be Batman. He would basically be forced to walk away from the mantle. And so for this moment, for right now, he simply says, the fear that I have of failing my parents, the fear that I felt as a child, and the anger that I feel now is my motivation for continuing to be Batman. And I will not rest until Gotham City is safe. And so because of this gift that Hal Jordan gave to Batman, it was basically kind of a mending of rifts. It's the two of them coming together to a degree, and Batman finally saying, thank you, you know, I'm glad you're back. And so what this does, it just kind of sets the stage. I mean, they're not the best of friends. It's not like Green Arrow and Green Lantern. They're not the best of friends, but the various rifts that existed between the two of them, the animosity that Batman had for Hal Jordan is for the most part beginning to go away. But with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.